Hello there, boys and girls. Welcome back to the channel, bringing you something a little bit different than usual. As you can see on the screen, I'm going to be bringing you my 2017-2018 Premier League predictions. We're going to split it up in a few different areas. We're going to do the bottom three, so who is going to be relegated this season. We're going to go from 11th down to 17th to see who's just going to miss out on that relegation. We're going to go from 7th down to 10th, who's going to just pip in to the top 10 and who's just going to miss out on European football. And then we're going to bring you the top 6, the big dogs of the league, who are my prediction to be champions and who are my predictions to be in the top 4. Let's get started, and we're going to bring you the bottom 3, who is going to get relegated. So the bottom 3, as you can see, are going to be Brighton, Burnley and Huddersfield. So let's crack on. Why do I think these 3 teams are going to be relegated? So let's start with Brighton. Brighton, coming up from the Championship this season, this summer, haven't really strengthened in the areas that they need to strengthen and haven't brought in the quality that you need for the Premier League. I think they brought a great goalkeeper in Matt Ryan from Valencia, fantastic goalkeeper, lots and lots of experience. But they're going to really look at people like Anthony Knockout, Steve Sidwell, Tommy Ahmed, Glenn Murray to really score them goals and create them chances to score enough goals to stay in the league. That's generally the problem with Championship sides coming up to the Premier League. They just don't score enough goals. They play fantastic football. They played fantastic football last season, but I just don't see them having enough to stay up this year. So unfortunately, Brighton, I think, are going to go back down to the Championship this season. Burnley are probably going to be the biggest shock of the season. They just haven't strengthened, and they've let go quite a few players in this season that have kept them up over the last 2 years. So they've let go people like Andre Gray, who is a fantastic striker. He's gone to Watford, and he's going to be an awesome signing for them. Michael Keane has gone to Everton for a massive £30 million. Joey Barton's released, obviously, for his misdemeanors outside of football, and they just haven't replaced those players to come in and do a good enough job for them. So Charlie Taylor, fantastic signing for him, but unfortunately I think he's going to be going back down to the Championship after one season. Jonathan Walters from Stoke City just doesn't score enough goals. He's a fantastic workhorse, does great work on the pitch for the team, but he's a striker. He needs to be scoring goals, and he will need to be scoring goals in that Burnley side. Jack Cork, I think, is another good signing for them in the middle of midfield. But again, I just don't feel that was the area that they needed to strengthen. And they needed to strengthen in their attacking player. So whether they're playing an attacking midfielder or a striker, they needed someone to really come in and do a fantastic job. They had the money because they're staying in the Premier League. But again, I think they're just not going to do enough this season. And as well, their away form last year was absolutely horrendous. They really stayed up last year on their home form alone. I don't think lightning strikes twice. You need to be able to win or at least pick up points away from home as well as at home. And I feel that could come back and bite them on the arse, really, to be fair. So bottom are going to be Brighton, and then Burnley are going to be second from bottom. Third, as you can see on the screen, are going to be Huddersfield United, another promoted side. Generally, when promoted sides come in, you're generally going to get one of the 3 that are going to stay up. And Huddersfield, I think, is going to be a tight one between them and the team that's going to be in 17th. I think they've brought in good players, but it's going to take time whether they're going to be Premier League players. Tom Ince has come in from Derby, and he's had 2 or 3 bites at the cherry at Premier League football and not really set the world alight. And this is a make or break season for Tom Ince. Have people like Casey Palmer on loan. They've kept the majority of their team that they've come up with, even if they had them on loan, they've actually bought them in. So Aaron Moy from Man City had him on loan last year, and they've bought him in. They've actually bought him from City for £8 million. And as I said, I think it'll be very, very tight between them and the team I've got in 17th on who's going to go down. But I'm going to pick Huddersfield just going to pick Huddersfield to go down alongside Brighton and Burnley. So as you can see, the team that I think will be there or thereabouts with Huddersfield this season is going to be Swansea. They had the great escape last year when Paul Clement came in, done a fantastic job with the squad that he had. but I think they're only just going to survive this season. It all depends on whether they can keep Gylfi Sigurdsson. He is their star man. He is their number one player. They can keep hold of him and keep him out of the clutches of teams like Everton. They will stay up. They brought in some decent players. Roque Mesa from Las Palmas on £11 million. Had a fantastic season with Las Palmas. Brought in Tammy Abraham as well on loan from Chelsea. He had a fantastic season, debut season really, in the Championship for Bristol City. Scored a hat load of goals, and he's picked Swansea ahead of places like Newcastle to go out on loan and further his development that Chelsea want. So I think Swansea are going to be there or thereabouts on the cusp of relegation. I don't think they've lost anybody really that big that they can't replace. It's just Gylfi Sigurdsson. If they lose him, I think they will go down. But at the minute, they're still with it. He's still with the team, and I think they'll stay up with him in there. So next up is Palace, as you can see on the screen. Frank de Boer has come in as manager, and I think he's done really, really well with some of the signings that he's made. So Ruben Loftus-Cheek coming on loan from Chelsea. I think it could be a breakout season for him, as well as another loanee signing that he's made with Timothy Fosu-Mensah. If you've played Football Manager, you'll know Timothy Fosu-Mensah turns out to be an absolute beast, and it could be another breakout season for those two very young midfielders. And then finally, Riedewald from Ajax on an undisclosed fee. I think that's a very canny piece of transfer work there, and I think with his fantastic management style when he was at Ajax, he had a little bit of an iffy season at Inter when there was a little bit of turmoil there in the background. But I think he'll come good at Palace. But I do think they'll be in and around that relegation zone, unfortunately, and they'll just do enough. Wilfried Zaha's a big, big player, as well as Christian Benteke. If Frank de Boer can get them ticking over like Sam Allardyce did towards the end of last season, I think they'll be okay. Only out for Palace has been Steve Mandanda. That little kind of trial didn't really work last season. Wayne Hennessy really overtook him last year, so he's gone back to Marseille. So next up is Bournemouth, and this Bournemouth are a tricky one. They progressed to 9th last season, but I think that kind of overshadowed how poor the bottom half of the league really was. They brought in Jermaine Defoe on a massive 3-year deal, and I just don't think Bournemouth are creative enough to go forward for Jermaine Defoe to score goals. Yes, he can score goals on his own, which he proved when he was at Sunderland for the last 2 years, but I think he needs a little bit more behind him to really do the business. Nathan Ake and Asmir Begovic are two fantastic signings for Bournemouth. I think Begovic is probably one of the best keepers in the league and really underutilised when he was at Chelsea. Could save them a lot of points, but I think they will be safe. They'll be in 15th this season, depending on if they bring any more transfers in before the transfer window ends. But Defoe needs service, and I really can't see where the service is going to come from. I know they've got the likes of Jordan Ibe and King and Afobe and players like that, but it really depends on whether they can play how Jermaine Defoe wants to play, which is forward in front of goal in the 6-yard box and get him the service to score them goals. Now, I've seen a lot of these prediction videos, and a lot of people have Watford to go down, or Watford to be in and around the relegation zone. I've got them a little bit high. I've got them in 14th. I think Marco Silva proved when he was at Hull last season that he can do the business, and they've brought in some very, very good players. People like Will Hughes, Nathaniel Chalobah, Andre Gray, fantastic signings to go alongside the players that are already there. Tom Cleverley already knows the club because he was there on loan when he was at Manchester United, and I think he'll be fantastic for that midfield to really get it working. And then they've bought unknowns really. Ricarlson from Fluminense, really don't know what we're going to get from him, but if he turns out to be half as decent as the hype behind him, he should really do the business at Watford alongside people like Troy Deeney. They've got rid of some of the iffy players that really didn't turn up towards the end of last season. Mario Suarez is being one of them, and I think they've got a fantastic head coach there. A bit like Southampton, they change the managers quite often, but they seem to do a really, really good job of making sure that they stay in that league. And I think Watford with Marco Silva have got someone that they now can progress that team. As long as he stays in the job for more than a year, he'll be absolutely fantastic. We could see next 2 or 3 years, Watford going up the league and making a better hash of it. Next up is probably the most hated team in the league so far, just because of the way they play and the manager that is there. Tony Pulis is still at West Brom, haven't really brought anybody in. They've lost, I personally think, one of the kind of stalwarts of the Premier League in Darren Fletcher to another team, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes' time. But they brought in Jay Rodriguez from Southampton, on the cusp of the England team a few years back, until we had that horrendous injury. If he comes good, he could lead them to some good things. Matty Phillips, Chadley are going to be two players that really need to turn on the style yet again, like they did last season, and Rondon as well, to score some goals for them. It could be there or thereabouts, but I've got them in 13th. I don't really see them being in a top 10 position like they potentially were last season, and going on a really good run of form. By the second half of the season, Tony Pulis knew they were safe and just took the foot off the gas. So I think 13th will be there or thereabouts for West Brom. I'm not even going to spend that much time on them. Next up is the one team that got promotion from the Championship last season, and I think they're going to be staying in. And that is Newcastle United. That is the Geordies. I think just going to miss out on the top 10. They're going to come in 12th. But again, Rafa Benitez is going to be the man that brings this team together. I thought last season in the Championship, they brought them together, and you could really see that when they were playing. So they brought in, again, when he was on loan, Atsu played a fantastic role in that Championship winning side. Atsu has been brought by Rafa. Brought in players like Jacob Murphy, who is a fantastic winger, really good young English player. We also brought in Javier Manquillo from Atletico Madrid, very, very good defender. Rafa must have known him because of his contacts in Spain, and they've brought him in as well. Got rid of some of the deadwood like Johan Gouffran, Vernon Anita, Matt Sells. All of those players have gone out either on loan or on proper deals, and I think Rafa knows the Premier League inside out. He knows how to win games in there. I think they've got some of the most exciting players that were outside of the Premier League now in the Premier League. People like Dwight Gale, Matt Ritchie, that can really rip up the Premier League, as we've seen before with Matt Ritchie when he was at Bournemouth. And I think get Dwight Gale some service and he'll score you some goals. Possibly a dark horse if you've got a fantasy football team going anytime soon. Dwight Gale, very cheap, but he will score you goals. And then finally, last team in the bottom kind of 7 teams, we've got Stoke City. They have lost players. They've lost people like Mark Arnautovic. They've also lost Glenn Whelan, Jonathan Waters. So some of the old guard that were there in Tony Pulis' side. But they have brought in some quality. So they brought in Darren Fletcher, fantastic player, one of the best captains in the league. Brought in Kurt Zouma on loan. Kurt Zouma is an absolute beast, an absolute tank, alongside with Bruno Martins Indy, who they brought in from Porto while he was on loan last season as well. And then youngsters, Josh Timon, good young left back from Hull City, brought them on loan. The only thing that's kind of worries me about Stoke is their firepower up front. Shaqiri, Berahino, Bojan, Sobby really need to turn on the style. Now Arnautovic isn't the leading man. They need to step up and actually do the work, give good service to the front people, and actually score some goals as well. Joe Allen's going to be really good alongside Darren Fletcher. Gives Joe Allen, with Darren Fletcher being there, gives Joe Allen that license to roam a little bit more. So that's from 11th to 17th. Now let's see who is going to make that top 10. So we start in the top 10 with former Premier League champions Leicester. So I think they've done some great business this season. Harry Maguire's come in, Ibora's coming from Sevilla, who's a fantastic player, and Kelechi Iheanacho from Man City. A little bit more firepower up front to go alongside players like Jamie Vardy. And they've also kept hold of some of the players that they brought in for the Champions League. People like Slimani. Mahrez is still there as well, but could potentially be on his way to places like Roma, who have been linked with him as well. And I think top 10 would be a successful season for them, really, to be fair. I think Shakespeare is a very good coach, very good manager, and if he continues the morale and the spirit that they ended the last season with, going into this season, I think they'll do very, very well. But I think they'll only come up to the top 10. But again, I think that will be a fantastic, really good season for them after the heights of the Champions League last season. Now, my dark horses for this year are West Ham United. They have had their first season in their new stadium. They've got that out of the way, and actually they have done fantastic work in the transfer market. First of all, they started off with a free transfer with Pablo Zabaleta coming in from Manchester City. Fantastic signing, fantastic servant in football for City. They then followed that up with Joe Hart on loan from City. Again, I think he'll do wonders and save points for West Ham this season. They then signed Marko Arnautovic from Stoke, which is a fantastic signing to go along with people like Ayew, Lanzini, Antonio, all these really creative players to go alongside what West Ham already had, and then to follow that up with probably the signing of the transfer summer this year, and that's Javier Hernandez from Bayer Leverkusen. £16 million reportedly, a release clause that had in his contract, and the boy gets you goals. If you give him service, he will get you goals, and I feel that West Ham, after the first season in their their new home, got that out of the way. They can no European football to really kind of worry about at all, and they can really focus on league football, and also possibly doing a bit in the FA Cup or the League Cup. And I think Javier Hernandez will be spearheading their trip up the league this season. Absolutely, no doubt about it. Again, another kind of dark horse. If you've got a fantasy football team, Javier Hernandez, for about 7 or 8 million, as far as I can see, Javier Hernandez is an absolute steal, and he will score you goals. So get him in. And with regards to outs, a lot of players that have gone out, some of them on loan, which I think are absolutely brilliant loan signings. Reece Oxford going to Borussia Mönchengladbach. I think that's fantastic. I think a lot more young English players should broaden their horizons a little bit and go out on loan into European football, and just pick up different cultures, different ways of playing football, different ways of seeing football, and really kind of seeing that. They've made a great sale of Ashley Fletcher to Middlesbrough for £6.5 million. Wasn't really going to get into the team with the wealth of forward attacking talent that West Ham now have. So they've made very good signings, very good outs, and I can see them being in the top 10 quite comfortably this season. We then follow that up with probably the most consistent two most consistent teams outside of the top 6. First of all is Southampton. Haven't made any notable signings apart from Mario Lemina from Juventus, a very good attacking midfielder. But the first time in a long time they've been able to hold on to the majority of their squad. They haven't had to sell anybody. Absolutely nobody, and it's great to see. They've got a new manager in Pellegrino, did fantastically well with Alaves last season, got them into the Copa del Rey final, beat Barcelona at the Nou Camp in the league as well, and also took a point away against Atletico Madrid. So he gets his teams well drilled, and I think with the influx of youth that comes through from Southampton, having that well-drilled manager behind them, I think that will do fantastically well. Top 8, I've got them in 8th again, and as I said, it will two most consistent performers outside of the top 6. Southampton, they're in 8th, and the next one will be Everton. I've got them in 7th. They basically won the transfer window this season alongside AC Milan, and they've brought in some fantastic players. Jordan Pickford, probably the best of the bunch, £25 million for the young goalkeeper, and then going alongside that, Michael Keane, £30 million from Burnley. Just to shore up that defence, make it a little bit more youthful as well, because they were aging quite a bit on that back line. Ashley Williams and Jagielka kind of coming over the wrong side of 30 now. Cuco Martina from Southampton, a bit of an odd one, but at the minute Seamus Coleman is out with a very long-term injury with a broken leg, so he will naturally come in and do that role while Coleman is out. And then they've brought in Sandro Ramirez from Malaga, and the big one, Wayne Rooney from Man United. So alongside young players like Tom Davis, and then more established players like Morales, I think it's a good blend that Ronald Koeman has got, and they won't fight for the top 6 or the top 4 this season, but I think they're well on their way to. And again, if they bring in someone like Gylfi Sigurdsson to kind of complement all of that, you never know. You never know. They could be the dark horses of this season. But at the minute, I've got them in 7th. And now we find out who makes my top 6. And most importantly, who is my champions for this season. So as you can see, I have got Manchester United as the champions of this year's Premier League. I just feel that they've had a year under Jose Mourinho. They've gotten to know his way of playing, gotten to know his style, and they've just had another good transfer window this season. They've brought in Romelu Lukaku, who will score goals for fun. Yes, he has a little bit of flack that he doesn't score against the top teams, but actually the teams that United really struggled against last year were the lower end teams. They didn't really struggle against the top end teams because Mourinho just set out his bus and just wanted to get out of there unscathed. They've then also brought in Matic from Chelsea, so they've weakened a rival really with Matic coming across from Chelsea to United, and he will basically just allow people like Ander Herrera, Mkhitaryan, Mata, Pogba to do what they do best and just launch attack after attack after attack, recycle the ball, give the ball away, and he's a fantastic replacement for Michael Carrick, who can't play 38-40 games a season. Matic is going to be there to be able to do that job as well. And then finally shored up that defence as well with Lindelof from Benfica. Yeah, he's looked a little bit ropey in pre-season, but all in all, I think over the season he'll come very, very good. Have a partnership with Bailly at the back, and I think United will win the league this season. I just think Jose's got them going to have them well drilled this year. I said they've got a year under Jose's style, and I think it's their time to just kind of come back onto the top of English football and show everybody that United are still there. Second, I do have last year's champions Chelsea. The only reason I've put Chelsea in at number 2, I just feel there's something brewing in the background. There's a lot of news stories regarding Conte with he's not really happy with what's been going on within the transfer window and the fact that they didn't get Lukaku. There was a massive uproar about Lukaku not going back to Chelsea, and Conte nearly left. So there's something brewing in Chelsea. Whether Conte's going to be there this time next season, I don't know. I don't think he will. I think something will happen, and they've got Champions League football this year to really come back with, as well as the league. They didn't have any European football last year, and they absolutely romped the league. So it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of look at both sides of the coin. They've brought in some fantastic players. Antonio Rudiger. So Rudiger is really going to go back into the back line alongside people like Cahill and Luis, give a little bit more strength, a lot more pace in that back line as well. Bakayoko's come in to replace Matic. He's going to play alongside Kante. And then Alvaro Morata, the only thing with the Morata signing, he's going to have to replace Diego Costa. Scored 25 goals this season to really replace him as the main man. Morata's never really done that in any club he's been to. He's not been that main man to score that many goals. So it's going to be a real testing time for Chelsea. And other than Morata, they've only got Batshuayi there as well. So if Morata gets injured and say Batshuayi gets suspended or something like that, who then comes in and really delivers at Chelsea? Same with the backline. They've had a lot of defenders go out on loan. So Zuma's out on loan. Loftus-Cheek, Chalobah, who can potentially play in the back as well. Nathan Ake can play at the back. So if they have a bit of an injury crisis or suspensions or something like that, who's really going to come in and actually deliver in that Chelsea side? The lack of depth potentially could cause them a few issues when there's so many competitions that they're going to be into this season. I think that could be their stumbling block. Third, I've got City. So again, I think they've had a year under Pep. They know how he plays. I think they've chucked money at the defence. I don't think Kyle Walker's worth 50 million quid. Ederson, second highest transfer for a goalkeeper behind Buffon. Danilo, Mendy and Kyle Walker to come in to fill out Clichy and Zabaleta and Sanya. They're all kind of gone now. Yeah, the defence, it depends on how well and how quickly they gel. So that's, again, why I've got them third. But their attacking talent is still there. So they've still got Sané. They've still got Jesus. De Bruyne, I think he'll probably be the player of the season this year if he continues his great kind of kind of surging in form. They've still got David Silva, Yaya Toure. They've still got Gundogan to come back in, and now they've also brought in Bernardo Silva, relatively unknown when he signed for Monaco, but Monaco have turned him into one of the best players in the world, and they've picked him up as well. So they've got a lot of talent in that attacking third. So it's just how Pep blends them together and makes them a cohesive unit. And I think that might take a few months to really get that in and get that settled. Hence why they're third. Fourth, I have got Spurs in fourth. Couple of reasons for this. One, they're playing at Wembley this year, and they don't really do well at Wembley. Or they haven't in the past anyway, and they've been playing in the Champions League and also in the FA Cup finals and EFL Cup finals as well. They haven't brought anybody in. Now, whether that is because Pochettino thinks and relies on the players that are currently there, or whether they're waiting until the final kind of days of the transfer window, which is what Daniel Levy usually does. But yet again, no real competition for people like Harry Kane or Eriksen or Ali to really fight for their place. It's like they're kind of given that they're going to start every single game, and you need that a bit of competition. But most importantly, they haven't strengthened when all other teams around them have strengthened. Even Liverpool to a small degree, they just haven't strengthened the team. Potentially could lose Danny Rose as well. If they lose Harry Kane within the first kind of 6 to 8 weeks like they did last season, and they had to put up Son Heung-min up top, very much so, lot up in the air for Tottenham, but I feel they'll pip, as you can see on the screen, I feel they'll pip Arsenal and Liverpool to that top four spot. Speaking of North London, we then go to Arsenal. I think they will stay in 5th this season. I don't think they'll progress any further. This all comes down to the Sanchez debacle. Whether he's physically going to be there or not, I personally don't think he'll be there by the end of the transfer window. I think he will have gone. And that's a massive hole to fill in a short space of time. If, say, he goes in the last week of the transfer window, who do Arsenal get in to replace someone like Alexis Sanchez? They brought in Alexandre Lacazette. His goals last season were phenomenal. He had the best shots on target, best goals ratio last season in Europe. So he's a proven goal scorer, and the service that Arsenal give their strikers, he could be top goal scorer this year. If he fires on all cylinders, then Arsenal could make a massive comeback. They've also got the Europa League to deal with as well, which is Thursday, Sunday. They've also brought in C. Kolasinac for that left back role. Had a great time at Schalke last season. Haven't lost anybody really big this year either. So, and other than Sanchez, I think he won't be there. Hence why I put them down in 5th. I just think they're a little bit too frail still. There's no real leaders of that Arsenal team. No one that's really going to stand up and grab it by the scruff of the neck and really kind of get the best out of their players whilst they're on that pitch without Wenger being there. So they've still got a soft underbelly for me, Arsenal, and if teams get at them and things aren't going their way, I do think they'll roll over. And then finally, 6, I have gone to Liverpool. I think Liverpool will pit their Merseyside rivals in Everton into 6. Again, a mixture of things. They didn't have any European football last season, and that helped within getting them into the top 4 last season. They've strengthened, but not as much as I think most Liverpool fans would have wanted them to be strengthened. So they brought in Mo Salah, who has absolutely torn up Serie A since he's been there from Chelsea. Probably overspent a little bit, but with regards to the transfer fees that have been going since Salah signed for Liverpool, actually, it's not too bad. Dominic Solanke on a free, wanted to further his career, not sit on the Chelsea bench or even go out on loan yet again. So he's made a brave move to go up to Anfield. And Andrew Robertson at left back, I think most Liverpool fans were screaming out for a left back to be signed this season, and they've gone out and got a very, very good left back, Andrew Robertson. Haven't lost anybody either. I know Coutinho is constantly in the news now, where Barca want him, PSG want him, and Liverpool literally just saying he's not for sale, even for 100. I think last time I saw it was about 96 million that Barca had put a bid in for, and Liverpool just turned around and went, not happening. So if they strengthen a little bit more, they could rise up to 5th or even push Spurs for 4th. But at the minute they're going to be 6th. They've got Champions League football to deal with as well, and I just don't see them pushing above the likes of Arsenal, the likes of Spurs, or even City. And between 3rd and 6th, it's a toss-up. It really is. Whoever delivers the best, especially when they go from European football back in to league football, and who has the best squad, who has the biggest squad, and who has the fittest squad to be able to do that week in, week out for the rest of the season. Leave me your predictions in the comment section below as well. Let's see if you agree with me on some things and don't agree with me on other things. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. So something a little bit different on the channel, trying to bring you a little bit more content going into real life football, as it were. If you have enjoyed it, please do leave the video a like. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and this is the first video you've seen on the channel. So subscribe if you're new and you've enjoyed everything you've seen. And until the next video, I'll see you soon.